It started on one of those evenings when the house felt too quiet, the kind of silence that almost hums beneath the sound of rain. I was tidying up our bedroom, folding laundry, pretending not to notice how empty it felt lately. When the drawer jammed halfway, I pulled harder, and something slipped out, landing softly on the rug. A cream-colored envelope. Elegant, sealed with a tiny gold sticker. My first thought? Maybe Eric had hidden a note for me. But when I picked it up, something in me hesitated. The paper felt heavier than it should, like it carried a secret. I opened it slowly, my heart already warning me not to. Inside was a floral card, expensive, intimate. I read the words once, then again, my stomach tightening with each syllable. Happy anniversary, my love. 2 years of laughter, secrets, and every reason to keep choosing you. Signed, C. I froze. The date inside read 2 months ago. 2 months ago, Eric had been in Chicago for that conference. I could still hear his voice from those nights. Good night, sweetheart. Soft and rehearsed. My pulse started to race, not out of heartbreak yet, but confusion. Whose anniversary was this? And how did it find its way into our drawer, into my hands, on a night that suddenly didn't feel so quiet anymore? I didn't hear him come in at first. The sound of the rain masked the door, the shuffle of shoes, the loosened tie. When Eric's voice finally reached me, soft, casual, familiar, it startled me so much I almost dropped the card. "Hey, you still up?" he asked, smiling that easy smile that used to make my heart melt. I slipped the card behind my back like a guilty child hiding evidence. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound normal. "Just cleaning." He studied me for a moment, his brow creasing slightly. "You okay? You look pale." I forced a small laugh, keeping my body still so the card wouldn't crinkle. "I'm fine. Just tired." The lie rolled off my tongue so smoothly it scared me. He leaned in and kissed my forehead, warm and unaware, before walking into the bathroom. I stood there frozen, listening to the water start to run. When the shower hissed to life, I pulled the card out again. The words blurred as my eyes filled with something sharp and stinging. 2 months ago. Chicago. Conference. My mind replayed every detail of that week. The late calls, the silence between texts, the way he sounded distant. The pieces began to connect, and I hated how easily they fit. I whispered to myself, barely breathing, 2 years of laughter and secrets. I guess one of those wasn't mine. I sat on the edge of the bed, still holding that card like it might burn a hole through my hand. The rain outside had turned steadier, matching the rhythm of my heartbeat. It wasn't just the words that hurt. It was how ordinary they looked. No drama, no smudged ink, no guilt in the handwriting. Just quiet confidence, like someone sure of her place in his life. I felt something inside me shift, something I couldn't yet name. Part of me wanted to storm into the bathroom and shove it in his face, but another part, colder, calmer, told me to wait. I watched his clothes lying carelessly on the chair, his watch on the nightstand, his wedding ring glinting under the soft lamp. That little golden circle suddenly looked more like a lock than a promise. I took a deep breath and tucked the card back into the drawer, not to forget it, but to remember where I found the truth. When Eric came out, steam following him like a veil, I smiled faintly and turned off the lamp. "Good night," I murmured. He kissed my cheek, unaware of the storm building right beside him. As I lay there, eyes open in the dark, I knew something had cracked between us. He just didn't hear it yet. But I did. And by morning, he would too. The next morning, I woke up before the alarm. The air felt thick, almost staged, like the calm before a scene you know will break. I moved quietly through the kitchen, setting the table just the way he liked. Coffee brewing, eggs soft, orange juice cold. Every sound seemed louder than usual, the spoon against the cup, the butter knife scraping the toast. I wasn't doing this out of love. It was precision, preparation, a performance I'd already written in my head. When Eric walked in, half awake and smiling, it almost threw me off. "Smells good," he said, stretching, oblivious. I smiled back, polite but hollow. Thought I'd treat you, I replied. It's kind of an anniversary, right? He frowned, a small laugh escaping his throat. Anniversary of what? That was my cue. I could feel my pulse behind my eyes, steady and deliberate. That's what I'd like to know, I said, sliding the napkin aside to reveal the card beneath it. For a second, I swear the world stopped moving. His eyes froze on the handwriting, then flicked up to mine, wide, calculating. Rachel, he stammered. I can explain. But I leaned back in my chair, my voice calm, almost kind. Please do, I said softly, because I'm dying to know who C is. He stared at me like a man caught in a spotlight. It's nothing serious, he said quickly, forcing a shaky laugh. Just a client. She sent that as a joke. A joke. The word landed like acid. I tilted my head, feigning curiosity. A joke with the word love in it? And a date 2 months ago? You must have very affectionate clients, Eric. The silence that followed was almost elegant. He couldn't fill it fast enough. He stood, pacing, rubbing the back of his neck. I made a mistake, okay? It ended. There it was, the confession, wrapped in cowardice. So it was real, I said, my tone flat but controlled. His face twisted with guilt, but he was still reaching for a way out. It didn't mean anything, he insisted. The words were tired, rehearsed, the kind used by men who've practiced regret but never redemption. I looked at him for a long moment, really looked, this man I'd shared years with, dinners, laughter, silence. And suddenly, I didn't feel heartbreak anymore, just distance. Then it won't mean anything, I said quietly, standing up. When I end this marriage. He froze, color draining from his face. I could feel the power shift, subtle and final. For the first time in months, I didn't feel small. I felt steady. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, like his excuses had finally run dry. Rachel, he said, his voice cracking between anger and pleading. You don't understand. I raised my hand slightly, not to silence him, but to draw the line that should have been there long ago. I understand perfectly, I said. You had a life inside our marriage that I didn't know existed, and now you get to live with it, not hide behind it. The quiet that followed was heavier than any scream. He sat down slowly, his hands shaking just enough to betray the calm he was trying to project. I'll fix this, he muttered, staring at the card as if it might vanish. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table, my voice soft but sharp. You can't fix what you kept breaking, I said. You just ran out of places to hide the pieces. He didn't respond. He just looked small, something I never imagined he could be. I gathered the dishes calmly, like the conversation had never happened. My movements were deliberate, almost ritualistic. As I rinsed the coffee cups, I caught his reflection in the window, lost, defeated, a stranger I used to love. And right then, I decided. This wouldn't end with anger. It would end with precision. Tomorrow, I'd start learning exactly how deep his lies went. The next day, I dressed like any other morning. Pressed blouse, calm face, hair neatly pinned. But inside, I was humming with quiet purpose. I told Eric I'd bring him lunch at the office, flashing a smile that almost fooled me. He looked relieved, maybe thinking breakfast had smoothed things over. Poor man. He never realized that forgiveness, in my hands, always comes with conditions. Driving downtown, I rehearsed the tone I'd use, the light, airy kind that hides sharp questions behind polite laughter. The rain had stopped, but the clouds hung low, heavy, like they knew something I didn't yet. When I arrived at his office, the receptionist greeted me warmly. Mrs. Walker, how nice to see you, she said. I placed the lunch bag on the counter and tilted my head. Is Christine here today? Her brows lifted, the name catching her off guard. Christine from the Chicago branch? She just transferred here last month. My smile didn't flinch, but inside my stomach turned. Really? I asked, keeping my voice casual. Small world. I thanked her and walked away, my pulse drumming behind every step. Now I had a name. Christine. The mysterious C from the card finally had a face. When I got back to my car, I sat there for a moment, fingers resting on the steering wheel, pretending to breathe normally. I could have screamed. Instead, I opened my phone and searched her name, Christine. LinkedIn was too polished, too corporate. But Instagram? That's where the truth lives. I scrolled through filtered smiles and champagne glasses until one photo stopped me cold. Eric and her, at a restaurant, his arm around her chair, both of them glowing under dim light. The caption read, "Celebrating something special." The date matched the one on the card. I stared at it, my throat tightening. 2 months ago, he was in Chicago, texting me goodnight between meetings. I'd believed him. I'd even wished him luck that morning. The memory stung like salt in a fresh wound. I zoomed in on the picture. His watch, the same one sitting on our nightstand. There was no denying it. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. Instead, a strange calm washed over me, one that scared me a little. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was awake. I saved the photo, locked my phone, and whispered to myself, "You celebrated an anniversary with her, Eric. Now I'll decide how we celebrate yours." That thought alone steadied my breathing. For the first time since finding that card, I wasn't powerless. I was planning. That evening, Eric came home humming, casual as ever, tossing his briefcase onto the couch. He kissed my cheek, his lips brushing the same skin that had burned with betrayal hours earlier. "Long day," he sighed, loosening his tie. I smiled, just enough to keep the mask in place. "I can imagine," I said softly. "You must be exhausted." He didn't notice the double edge in my voice, or maybe he did and chose not to face it. Cowards always choose comfort over truth. After dinner, he fell asleep on the sofa, the TV flickering across his face like a man caught between two lives. I watched him quietly, memorizing every detail, the way his hand twitched when he dreamed, the faint smile that used to mean safety. I wondered if she'd seen that same smile, if she believed it meant love. Maybe it did, for a while. But love isn't supposed to have asterisks or anniversaries with other names attached. Later that night, I sat by the window with my laptop, the glow lighting my face as I typed her name again. I didn't stop at the photo this time. I dug deeper. Company events, expense records, flight confirmations. Everything he thought was hidden lived quietly in plain sight. By the time the clock hit midnight, I had everything I needed. I closed the laptop, leaned back, and whispered, "Game on." I spent the next few days moving through life like an actress rehearsing her final scene. Every smile, every word, every quiet nod was deliberate. Eric had no idea. He thought the storm had passed, that my silence meant forgiveness. He still kissed me goodbye every morning, still called me Han, still sent texts about dinner plans, as if the world hadn't shifted beneath us. But I wasn't living in his story anymore. I was writing my own ending. When his birthday week rolled around, the idea came to me like a whisper, a celebration. The irony of it made me smile. He loved anniversaries, didn't he? Loved moments marked with candles and cards. So I decided to give him one, something unforgettable. I made reservations, canceled them, then changed plans again. In the end, I decided it had to be at home. Intimate, controlled, my stage, my rules. The night of the dinner, I set the table with care, his favorite wine breathing, candles flickering just low enough to flatter his lies. I even wore the dress he once said made me look timeless. Fitting, really, since time had been the weapon he used against me. Those stolen nights, those secret anniversaries. As I stepped back to admire the scene, I felt a strange thrill. I wasn't nervous. I was ready for the curtain to rise. When Eric walked through the door, his eyes softened the way they used to when surprises were still innocent. "Wow," he said, taking in the candles, the music, the smell of roasted herbs in the air. You didn't have to do all this. I smiled, the kind that hides 1,000 thoughts behind it. You're right, I replied lightly, pouring his wine. But I wanted to. After all, you love anniversaries. His laugh came quick, too relieved, and for a moment, I almost pitied him. Almost. We ate like strangers pretending to remember who they were. He talked about work, about deadlines, about how stressful everything had been. I nodded, offering sympathy in all the right places. Every bite I took was measured, every word rehearsed. He had no idea that beneath the table, resting near his plate, was the small gift box I'd wrapped myself that afternoon. I waited until the perfect pause between courses, the moment when his guard had finally dropped. I got you something, I said softly, sliding the box toward him. He grinned, flattered. You didn't have to. I know, I said, but you'll want to open it. He tore through the paper with the enthusiasm of a man still convinced the world revolved around him. When the lid came off, his face fell. Inside was the printed copy of the anniversary card, the Instagram photo, and a neatly folded letter addressed to HR department. The color drained from his face so fast it almost fascinated me. He stared at the papers like they might rearrange themselves into a different story. Rachel, please, he said, his voice trembling. It's not what it looks like. I tilted my head slightly, my tone almost gentle. You celebrated with her 2 months ago, Eric. Tonight you celebrate with me one last time. His breath caught, eyes darting between me and the damning evidence spread before him. You wouldn't ruin my job, he said, the panic creeping into his voice now. I leaned back, watching him with a calm I didn't know I possessed. No, Eric, I said evenly. You did that yourself. I just kept the receipts. He ran his hands through his hair, muttering half sentences, trying to rebuild a life already collapsing in front of him. The man who once lectured me about honesty now looked like a child afraid of getting caught. I stood up, collecting the plates as if we'd simply finished dessert. You know, I said softly, setting them in the sink, you always told me truth comes out eventually. I guess you were right. He didn't answer. He just sat there, staring at the candlelight flickering over his future in ashes. I turned off the music, blew out the candles, and said the only words that felt honest. Happy birthday. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight spilling through the curtains, warm, almost mocking. Eric had left early, probably to try salvaging what was left of his reputation before I mailed the letter. I took my time making coffee, stirring it slowly, feeling the weight of finality in every small movement. It wasn't bitterness that filled me anymore. It was precision, purpose, the kind of clarity that comes after you stop asking why and start deciding how. I drove to the post office like it was any other errand. No trembling hands, no hesitation, just a sealed envelope addressed to HR with proof of everything he thought he'd buried. Company expenses, travel receipts, screenshots, photos. Every lie had a timestamp, and I'd saved them all. As I slid the envelope into the slot, I whispered, "This isn't revenge, Eric. It's balance." The sound of it dropping echoed through me, like a door closing softly behind my past. By the time I got home, his toothbrush was gone, a few drawers emptied. I smiled faintly. Cowards always pack light when guilt gets heavy. I brewed another cup of coffee, this time for myself, sat by the window, and watched the wind move the curtains. For the first time in years, the silence didn't ache. It breathed. 3 days later, I got the call. A soft, nervous voice from Eric's company informed me that an internal investigation had begun. "We may need your cooperation, Mrs. Walker," she said politely. I smiled into the receiver, though she couldn't see it. "Of course," I replied. "I'm happy to help uncover the truth." The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, I'd lived with half-truths and polite lies. Now, the truth was working for me. That night, Eric called. His tone was a mixture of fury and disbelief. "You destroyed me," he said, his voice hoarse. I took a slow breath, looking out at the quiet street from my sister's guest house. No, I said softly. I revealed you. There's a difference. The silence on the other end stretched, heavy and accusing. We can fix this, he said finally, his voice small. I almost laughed. You already did, I replied. Just not with me. When I hung up, I realized I wasn't shaking. There was no rush of triumph, no guilt, no fear, just stillness. Peace has a strange sound when you've forgotten what it feels like. It doesn't roar, it hums. I turned off my phone, poured myself a glass of wine, and toasted to something I hadn't celebrated in years. Freedom that I earned on my own terms. Within a week, the news spread quietly through Eric's company. Office whispers, awkward glances, polite silences. His title disappeared from the firm's website, replaced by another name. Justice didn't come with a grand scene or public humiliation. It came in paperwork, signatures, and an empty parking space where his car used to be. I didn't need to see him fall. Knowing it happened was enough. Some endings don't need applause. They just need closure. I packed the last of my things from our house, the one that had turned from home to evidence room. Every object seemed lighter now. Every photo, every piece of furniture. The memories weren't painful anymore. They were just lessons dressed as decor. As I locked the door for the last time, I whispered a quiet goodbye, not to him, but to the woman who once waited for love that never showed up. That night, I slept in my sister's guest house. No wedding ring on my hand, no ghosts in the hallway. For the first time, my dreams didn't circle back to him. They belonged to me. The next morning, I woke up early, opened the window, and let the sunlight in. It didn't feel like a new day. It felt like a new life beginning to stretch its arms. 6 months later, I found myself sitting by the window of a little cafe downtown, the kind that always smells like roasted beans and second chances. I had my journal open, the pages filled with bits of healing, notes, reflections, small victories. Outside, the city moved at its usual rhythm, but inside, time felt softer. I glanced at the date written on the corner of the page and smiled. The same date printed inside that cursed card. Only now, it didn't sting. It shimmered. Laura walked in, waving at me as she brushed the rain off her coat. You're glowing, she said, grinning as she sat down. I laughed, shaking my head. Am I? I asked. Maybe it's just the caffeine, or the fact that today feels lighter. She raised an eyebrow. Special occasion? I sipped my coffee, savoring the warmth that didn't depend on anyone else's presence. Kind of, I said. It's an anniversary. Her smile widened. Oh, of what? I looked out the window, where the raindrops danced on the glass just like that night months ago. The day I stopped celebrating lies, I said simply. Laura reached across the table and squeezed my hand. No words needed, just understanding, the kind that women like us earn the hard way. The waiter brought a slice of cake, one candle flickering on top. For the lady, he said with a smile before walking away. Laura laughed softly. You told them it was your birthday? Not exactly, I said, lighting the candle myself. The flame reflected in the window, small but steady, and I realized how much that simple light mirrored me, burned out once, but not gone. This one's for me, I whispered, for making it through. I closed my eyes for a second before blowing out the candle, not wishing for love or luck, but for continued peace. Around us, the cafe buzzed with chatter and laughter, people lost in their own stories. For the first time in a long while, I didn't envy any of them. My story wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Every scar, every revelation, every choice, I owned them all now. Laura raised her cup toward me. To new beginnings, she said warmly. I met her toast with a quiet grin. To honest anniversaries, I answered. And when I took that first bite of cake, sweet and deliberate, it didn't taste like revenge anymore. It tasted like freedom, like the calm after a storm you thought would never end. After Laura left, I stayed a while longer, just watching the world outside move in its quiet rhythm. Cars passed, umbrellas opened, life went on, beautifully indifferent. I opened my journal once more and wrote a single line across a fresh page. He celebrated love with a lie. I celebrated freedom with the truth. Reading it back, it didn't sound bitter. It sounded final, whole, like the punctuation I'd been waiting to use for years. I gathered my things and stepped out into the drizzle. The air smelled like wet pavement and renewal, the kind of scent that reminds you that even storms can clean what they destroy. Each raindrop felt softer now, like forgiveness in disguise. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't broken. I was rewritten. One honest word at a time. As I walked away from the cafe, I realized something small but powerful. I didn't need someone to promise forever. I just needed myself to mean today. And for the first time in a long time, that was more than enough.